The sun shimmered across the waves as the luxury yacht floated like a dream on the open sea. Guests mingled on the polished deck, clinking glasses, sharing shallow laughs, and throwing glances toward the quiet woman near the railing. She wore a simple dress, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth. To most of them, she looked like someone's plus one polite, quiet, clearly out of place among the designer gowns and diamond watches. Some whispered, others smirked. A few didn't bother to hide their judgment. She stayed calm, even as the whispers turned into snide remarks. A group nearby laughed when she politely asked where the restroom was. One woman scoffing, "It's not a tour boat, sweetheart." Still, she smiled. She didn't correct anyone. She didn't defend herself. She just watched, listening more than speaking. The crew, however, exchanged quick glances. One of them nodded subtly, and a moment later, a voice came from behind her. "Excuse me, ma'am. The captain is ready when you are." The laughter stopped. Every head turned. For the first time, silence fell over the deck. The same woman they had mocked now stood with quiet authority as the crew waited for her cue. No one dared to speak as she looked around slowly, taking her time. Who was she, really? Why did the crew call her Maam like she owned the place? And what would happen next? One thing was clear. She wasn't just another guest. What they didn't know was this wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated. But this time, she planned it that way. And just as she took a step forward, a crew member handed her a folder with the yacht's manifest. Her name was at the top. That's when everything started to change. The folder in her hands was sleek and black, stamped with the yacht's golden emblem. Her fingers brushed over the cover before she opened it casually, as if she'd done this 100 times. Inside were the official documents, route details, guest list, staff names, and at the very top her name, printed in bold. Owner Zara Malik. A few guests who stood close enough to glimpse it blinked in disbelief. Zara didn't look up right away. She let the weight of the silence settle. No one moved. The same people who had laughed at her just minutes ago now looked at each other, confused, embarrassed, unsure what to say. One man coughed awkwardly and stepped aside. Another woman stared at her champagne glass, suddenly unsure if she even belonged on board. Zara finally closed the folder and nodded to the crew. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was calm but firm. The staff responded instantly, some adjusting the sails, others clearing space for her to walk. The respect they showed wasn't rehearsed. It came from familiarity, from experience, from knowing who she really was. As Zara moved through the crowd, the guests parted like water. She didn't gloat. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her presence now felt different, solid, unshakable. The whispers started again, but this time they were filled with confusion, even fear. How did they not know who she was? Why hadn't anyone warned them? What no one realized was that this yacht wasn't just a toy for her. It was a symbol, a message. The same yacht where she was once humiliated now belonged to her. But this wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. This was about something deeper. And, as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the water, Zara looked toward the horizon like she was waiting for something, or someone. One of the guests, Daniel Cross, watched her closely. From the far side of the deck, he wasn't laughing. He hadn't laughed at all. In fact, the moment the crew called her Maam, he'd gone stiff. Because he recognized Herbert from somewhere else. Years ago, during a merger meeting at a firm he thought he'd never hear from again. Back then, she was the junior advisor with no voice in the room. Just a girl with sharp eyes and quiet strength, ignored and dismissed. Daniel hadn't paid attention then. Now, he couldn't look away. Meanwhile, Ava, the woman who had mocked Zara about the restroom, clutched her phone behind her back, discreetly searching the name Zara Malik. Her lips parted when she found the article's tech entrepreneur, investor, founder of Malik Ventures. Rumors of her buying out troubled companies and flipping them in silence. But why show up like a nobody today? Why hide her status? The answer wasn't clear yet, but something about this yacht party felt off, especially when 2 additional crew members came up from below deck with locked silver cases. One of them whispered something to Zara, and she only nodded slightly before walking back toward the upper lounge. Some guests followed her with their eyes, others stayed frozen in place. Tension built beneath the surface like a shifting tide. No one dared to leave, but no one felt comfortable anymore either. Zara entered the lounge, where an older man waited. For her, Mr. Patel, the yacht's previous owner, now in financial ruin. He stood when she walked in, eyes heavy with regret. "I didn't think you'd actually come," he said. "I told you," she replied, calm but cold. "I never forget who tried to sink me." Outside, no one knew what that conversation would spark. But something big was coming. Zara stood across from Mr. Patel, the silence between them heavy with unspoken history. The soft hum of the yacht's engine was the only sound as the ocean stretched endlessly beyond the windows. He glanced around the lounge, once his domain, now hers. He shifted uncomfortably, his voice low. "You could have bought anything, any company, any yacht. Why this one?" Zara's expression didn't change. "Because this is where you told me I'd never belong, remember?" Her words were soft, but they landed like a strike. "You said some people were meant to serve, not lead. That I should be grateful to take notes while the real decisions were made." His face flushed. "That was business. Nothing personal." "That's where you went wrong," she said. "It was always personal." Outside, the guests grew restless. Rumors spread fast. Zara had taken over the yacht from Patel. Some whispered that she'd bought it in a hush deal after his company collapsed. Others said she was here to confront him, but no one knew for sure. All they saw were crew members locking certain rooms, and a private security detail now posted near the control deck. Daniel stepped forward finally, unable to hold back. "What's going on?" he asked one of the stewards quietly. The crewman didn't answer, nodded toward the lounge inside. Zara leaned closer to Patel. "You thought this party was yours, but it's not. This entire event, every invitation, every name on the list was chosen for a reason." Patel paled. "You set this up." "I built it from scratch," she said. The lights flickered as the yacht shifted course. Suddenly, the music cut off. Ava looked around nervously. "Where are we going?" Zara stepped out of the lounge just as a storm began forming on the horizon, and the truth was about to break as the first distant rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. Zara stood at the edge of the deck, her hair stirring in the sharp sea wind. The crew worked in hushed coordination, steering the yacht off its expected route. The guests, once so smug and confident, now clung to glasses and glanced nervously at the changing sky and the woman they had underestimated. Then came the second twist, subtle, but far more unsettling. A sharp chime echoed through the speakers. It wasn't music. It was a security alert. One of the guests' names had just triggered a flag in the system. A digital voice calmly announced, "Attention! Guest Daniel Cross has been restricted from entering secure areas. Clearance revoked." All eyes turned. Daniel froze. His face went pale. Zara didn't even look at him as she spoke. "Daniel, you didn't just ignore me back then. You signed off on the layoffs that destroyed my mother's clinic. You said it was just numbers. I remember everything." The wind picked up, and rain started falling lightly over the deck, but no one moved. Tension tightened like a rope about to snap. Daniel stepped forward, his voice shaking. You can't do this. I didn't even know who you were back then, but I knew who you were, Zara interrupted. Her tone was low but controlled, and I knew someday you'd be exactly where I needed you to be. The silver cases that had been locked below deck were now brought up by the crew. They set them carefully on the central table under the canopy. One opened with a quiet click, revealing thick files, hard drives, and sealed envelopes. This yacht isn't just mine, Zara said calmly. It's the stage. The final act was near, but the truth inside those cases would change everything. As the rain began to fall harder, guests huddled under the canopy, eyes fixed on the open case in front of them. Zara reached in and pulled out a single envelope, thick with printed pages. She handed it to a crew member who began distributing copies. Pages filled with financial records, internal emails, and signed authorizations, proof of corporate fraud, offshore accounts, and secret deals that led to the downfall of Patel's company and the suffering of hundreds, including Zara's own family. Daniel scanned the papers, panic rising in his chest. "This is insane," he muttered. "You hacked this? You could go to prison." "I didn't hack anything," Zara said coldly. "Your team left everything behind when you sold the server. It was legal, just inconvenient for you." Patel dropped into a chair, the weight of it all finally crushing his pride. "You planned this from the beginning." "I gave you both a chance to come clean," Zara said. "You chose to laugh instead." Gasps echoed across the deck as more guests realized their names were buried in the documents. Some had signed deals without understanding the full consequences. Others had simply turned a blind eye. No one was innocent. Then came the final twist. Zara stepped aside, and from below deck emerged a woman in a navy blazer, calm, composed, and unmistakably government. "Zara Malik has provided us with everything," she announced. "We've been tracking this network for over a year." This wasn't just personal. It was an undercover operation. Daniel tried to run. Two crew members stopped him, instantly plainclothes agents. Sirens sounded faintly in the distance, growing louder as a small patrol boat approached. As the yacht was surrounded, Zara finally exhaled. She hadn't just taken back her dignity. She'd taken down an empire with the truth. The rain softened into a mist as the patrol boat docked beside the yacht. Agents boarded swiftly, moving with quiet efficiency. Daniel and a few others were led away in handcuffs, their faces drained of color, their voices silent now. Mr. Patel didn't resist, simply sat there, staring blankly at the sea, knowing the empire he built on arrogance and exploitation had finally crumbled. The remaining guests stood in awkward silence, unsure of where they fit in the story anymore. Some offered nervous smiles, others avoided eye contact entirely. Zara said nothing. She didn't need to. Her actions had spoken louder than any speech ever could. Later, as the sun began to break through the clouds, the yacht gently cruised back toward the harbor. The sea, once tense and gray, shimmered again with light. A few crew members came up to her, smiling with quiet pride. They knew what this day had meant, not just for Zara, but for everyone who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside. Ava approached her hesitantly, the earlier arrogance long gone. "I didn't know who you were," she said softly. "I judged you." "I'm sorry." Zara looked at her, not with anger, but with calm. "Maybe next time," she said, "you'll look a little deeper." As the yacht approached the dock, Zara stood at the helm, no longer the quiet guest in the corner, but a woman who had reclaimed her story. What started as a silent presence ended as a statement no one could ignore. The truth was, she hadn't come to get revenge. She came to remind them that power doesn't always wear diamonds or shout to be heard. Sometimes it just waits and strikes when it matters most. And this time they would never forget her name.